Have you ever been made to feel invisible in your own family, like you're just taking up space, consuming resources, offering nothing in return? I lived that reality for 23 years. My parents called me their mistake, my siblings treated me like a ghost. They made it clear I was the burden they never wanted. But life has a strange way of turning tables. The day came when everything flipped. The family that pushed me away suddenly couldn't survive without me. This is my story, and trust me, you won't believe how it ends. My name is Maya, and I was born into the Sharma family on a rainy August night in 2001. But unlike most birth stories filled with joy and celebration, mine came with disappointment. I wasn't supposed to exist. My mother already had two sons, Arjun and Vikram, and my father had made it clear their family was complete. When Mom discovered she was pregnant with me, Dad wanted her to terminate the pregnancy. She refused, but not out of love. She simply couldn't go through with it. I grew up knowing I was unwanted. It wasn't something whispered behind closed doors. It was open, casual, like commenting on the weather. If only you were a boy, Mom would say while serving dinner, giving my brothers extra helpings while my plate remained half empty. Dad rarely looked at me. When he did, his eyes held something worse than anger - indifference. My brothers learned from our parents. Arjun, the eldest, was studying engineering. Vikram was in medical school. Both were the pride of our middle class family in Pune. I was just Maya, the girl who existed in the background. They never included me in their conversations. If I entered a room, they'd stop talking. If I asked for help with homework, they'd say they were too busy. Birthday celebrations happened for them with cakes and gifts. Mine passed unnoticed, unmarked. I slept in a small storage room, converted into a bedroom. It had space for a single bed and a small desk. My brothers shared a large room with air conditioning, computers, and everything they needed. I studied under a dim lamp, wearing my school uniform until it frayed, because buying me new clothes was unnecessary expense. The worst part wasn't the material deprivation, it was the emotional starvation. I craved a kind word, a gentle touch, acknowledgement that I mattered. Instead, I got criticism. I was too dark-skinned compared to my fair brothers, too quiet, too useless. What will we do with you? Dad would ask, shaking his head, who will marry a girl like you? You'll be our burden forever. I learned to make myself small. I stopped asking for things. I stopped expecting affection. I became a shadow in my own home, moving quietly through rooms, eating quickly, speaking only when absolutely necessary. At school, I threw myself into studies. Books became my escape, knowledge my rebellion. If my family wouldn't value me, maybe the world would. Teachers noticed my dedication. I consistently ranked first in my class, won academic competitions, received certificates and medals. I'd bring them home hoping for a smile, a word of praise. Mom would glance at them and say, "Good, but don't get too proud. Study is your only option since no one will want to marry you with that face." Dad wouldn't even look. My brothers would mock me. Teacher's pet, they'd sneer. What's the point? You'll just get married and forget everything. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Studying gave me purpose, hope that life could be different. I dreamed of college, of leaving home, of becoming someone beyond this house's suffocating walls. I saved every rupee I could, birthday money from distant relatives who didn't know my family's dynamics. Small prizes from competitions I hid it in my mattress, counting it every night like a prisoner counting days until freedom. By the time I finished high school, I had enough for 1 year's fees at a government college. I applied to universities far from Pune, places where no one knew the Sharma family, where I could reinvent myself. My parents didn't help with applications. They didn't ask about my plans. They assumed I'd failed, that I'd stay home and eventually marry whoever they found. The day my acceptance letter arrived from Delhi University with a partial scholarship. I held it like a lottery ticket. This was it, my escape, my chance. I was 18, legally an adult, and I was going to leave, but I had no idea that this decision would set off a chain of events that would change everything, forever. I left home on a humid July morning without ceremony or goodbyes. Mom was in the kitchen. Dad had already left for his job at the municipal office. My brothers were still asleep, their room door closed. I had one suitcase with my clothes, books, and that precious envelope of savings. I took one last look at the storage room that had been my prison for 18 years, and I walked out. The train to Delhi felt like a journey to another planet. Every kilometre between me and Pune lifted weight off my chest. I watched the landscape change through the window, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time in my life, I was free, nobody to tell me I was worthless, nobody to treat me like I didn't exist, just me and possibility. Delhi University became my sanctuary. I shared a tiny hostel room with 3 other girls who became the sisters I never had, Priya, Naya, and Anjali. Didn't judge me by my family's rejection. They saw me, really saw me. We stayed up late talking about dreams, sharing food, laughing until our stomachs hurt. For the first time, I experienced what family should feel like. Money was impossibly tight. My scholarship covered tuition, but living expenses drained my savings quickly. I took a part-time job at a bookstore near campus, working evenings and weekends. The owner, Mrs. Kapoor, was a widow who treated me with kindness I'd never known. She'd pack extra lunch for me, saying she'd cook too much. She'd give me books to keep, calling them damaged inventory. She saw me struggling and helped without making me feel small. I called home once a month, out of obligation more than desire. The conversations lasted less than 5 minutes. How are you? Fine. Do you need money? No. Okay. Take care. Click. My mother's voice remained flat, disinterested. She never asked about my classes, my friends, my life. My father never got on the phone. My brothers never asked to speak with me. I was out of sight, truly out of mind, but I was thriving. I topped my class in English literature. Professors encouraged me to consider graduate school. I started writing for the college magazine, my words finally finding an audience. I joined the debate club and discovered I had a voice, literally and metaphorically. The shy shadow girl from Pune was becoming someone confident, articulate, visible. In my 3rd year, I met Rahul. He was a journalism student, passionate about storytelling and social justice. He noticed me in the library where I'd hidden between shelves, reading poetry. You look like you're in love with that book, he said, smiling. Mind if I fall in love with it too? It was cheesy, but it made me laugh. We started talking, then dating. He was the first person I told about my childhood, my family's rejection. He didn't pity me. He admired my strength. You didn't just survive, he said, you're becoming someone amazing. For 3 years, I barely thought about the Sharma family. They became like characters from a story I'd once read, distant, disconnected, irrelevant to my present. I built a new life, new relationships, new identity. I was Maya Sharma, top student, published writer, bookstore employee, girlfriend, friend. The burden label faded like an old scar. Then, in my final year, during exam season, my phone rang at Tayam, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. When I did, I heard my mother's voice, but different, shaking, desperate. Maya, beta, please come home. Your father, he's in the hospital. It's serious, we need you, please. Beta, she'd called me beta daughter. She'd never used that word for me before. Something in her voice sent chills through me. What happened? I asked. Heart attack, she sobbed. Massive heart attack, the doctors say. They say we should Prepare, please come, please, I'm begging you. I sat there in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, listening to my mother cry. The woman who'd treated me like a burden for 21 years was begging me to come home. The family that never needed me suddenly couldn't face crisis without me. Part of me wanted to say no. To hang up, to let them handle it alone like they'd always made me handle everything. But another part, the part that still remembered being a little girl desperately wanting her mother's love, that part said, I'll catch the first train tomorrow. The pew I returned to felt both familiar and foreign. The auto rickshaw dropped me at the hospital entrance just as dawn broke. I hadn't slept on the overnight train, my mind racing with questions, memories, and something I couldn't quite name, maybe fear, maybe anger. Maybe that old desperate hope that refuses to die. I found them in the ICU waiting area. Mom sat hunched on a plastic chair, her face aged 10 years in the 3 since I'd last seen her. Her usually neat hair hung loose and uncombed. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Arjun paced nearby, his confident engineer's demeanor replaced with visible panic. Vikram sat against the wall, still in his doctor's coat, head in his hands. They looked broken. Mom saw me first. She stood, took a stumbling step forward. And for a moment I thought she might embrace me. Instead, she grabbed my hand, the first time she'd voluntarily touched me in years. Thank God you came, she whispered. Thank God. Dad was behind glass walls. Tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped rhythmically. He looked small. In that hospital bed, nothing like the imposing man whose disapproval had dominated my childhood. The doctor, a tired woman in her 50s, explained the situation. Severe heart attack, emergency surgery completed, survival uncertain for the next 48 hours. Even if he lived, there would be complications potential. Paralysis, speech difficulties, long recovery. Then came the other shoe dropping. Your father's treatment will be expensive, the doctor said gently. The surgery alone was 3 lakhs. He'll need ICU care, medications, possibly long-term rehabilitation. Do you have insurance? The silence that followed was deafening. Mom looked at the floor. Aryan's jaw clenched. Vikram shook his head slowly. Dad let the insurance lapse 2 years ago, Vikram finally said. Said it was unnecessary expense. We have some savings. Maybe 1 lakh, but 1 lakh wouldn't even cover a week in ICU. I did the math automatically, my mind sharp despite exhaustion. Treatment could easily cost 5 to 7 lakhs or more. The Sharma family was middle-class, comfortable enough when everyone was healthy, but not equipped for medical catastrophe. We'll figure it out, Arjun said, but his voice carried no conviction. We can take a loan, borrow from relatives. The next hours revealed the full picture, and it wasn't pretty. Arjun, the engineering graduate, had been fired from his job 3 months ago for poor performance. He'd hidden it from the family, leaving home daily to maintain the pretense of employment. Vikram, the medical student, had failed his final year exams and was repeating, accumulating more debt for his education. The successful sons were failing spectacularly. More devastating revelations followed. Dad's municipal job had been his identity, but he'd made enemies with his rigid, superior attitude. Those colleagues he'd expected support from didn't visit. Relatives Mom called either made excuses or offered token amounts with lectures about financial responsibility. The Sharma family, so proud of their sons and their reputation, discovered that pride doesn't pay hospital bills. I watched this unraveling with mixed emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. See, your golden boys aren't so golden. But another part just felt sad. This was the family structure I'd grown up in, and it was built on sand. Everything I'd been excluded from: the pride in the sons, the investment in their futures. The social status was collapsing. On the second evening, Mom finally approached me directly. We were alone in the corridor. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Desperation, yes, but also something like shame. Maya, she began, her voice cracking. I know we weren't good to you. I know you have every right to leave and never look back. But please help us. I don't know what to do. I wanted to ask her why. Why me? Why now? Where was this humility when I was a child begging for affection? But I couldn't, because for all my growth, all my independence, I was still that little girl wanting to matter to her mother. How? I ask simply. I'm a student. I have no money. Mom's next words changed everything. You're educated. You're smart. You always were. We just couldn't see it. You can think clearly. Your brothers can't even think straight, right? Now, we need you to tell us what to do, to help us navigate this. You're the only one who can save this family. The burden they never wanted had become their only hope. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the hospital cafeteria with my laptop, a borrowed charger, and terrible coffee, creating a plan. If I was going to help, I'd do it my way, methodically, intelligently, without the emotional chaos that had paralyzed my family. First, I catalogued assets. Dad's Provident Fund could be partially withdrawn for medical emergencies. The family owned a small plot of land in their village, worthless sentimentally, but potentially valuable practically. Mom had gold jewelry from her wedding, maybe worth to lakhs. I made spreadsheets, calculated costs, identified gaps. Next, I researched options. Government health schemes Dad hadn't enrolled in because he thought they were beneath him. NGOs that supported middle-class families facing medical crises. Hospital payment plans. Crowdfunding platforms I'd written about in journalism class. Every avenue, explored methodically. By morning, I had a strategy. I presented it to my family like a business proposal because emotion would just cloud judgment. Here's what we'll do, I said, showing them my laptop. We apply for the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana retroactively. Yes, it's possible in emergency cases. We sell the village land immediately, not for sentimental value, but for survival. Mom's jewelry gets appraised and sold to the highest bidder. We start a crowdfunding campaign. And everyone in this family gets a job, any job. Right now, Arjun bristled. Crowdfunding. That's begging publicly. Our reputation, your reputation doesn't pay for IQ beds. I cut him off. My voice sharper than intended. You can have pride. Or you can have Dad alive. Choose. The bluntness shocked them. But I was done being gentle. I'd earned the right to be direct. I took charge completely. I contacted government offices, pushed through bureaucratic red tape with persistence that came from years of having to fight for everything. I haggled with the hospital administration. Got payment extensions. I photographed Dad's medical reports. Wrote a compelling crowdfunding story, truthful but strategic, and launched it on multiple platforms. The jewelry sale hurt Mom deeply. I accompanied her to the gold merchant, watched her remove bangles and necklaces that represented her entire married life. She cried silently. For a moment, I wanted to comfort her, to say we'd find another way, but there wasn't another way. These are just objects, Mom, I said quietly. Dad is a person. You're choosing right. The crowdfunding surprised everyone. My network from Delhi University shared it widely. Mrs. Kapoor from the bookstore donated generously and shared it with her community. Strangers moved by the story contributed small amounts that added up. Within a week, we'd raised to lakhs, not enough for everything, but enough to breathe. Arjun and Vikram, humbled and desperate, followed my instructions. Arjun took a position at a call center below his qualifications but immediate income. Vikram started tutoring pre-medical students in the evenings. They worked with a desperation that would have been satisfying if the situation weren't so dire. I stayed in Pune, managing everything while trying to study for my finals remotely. Rahul video called me every night, helped me stay sane. My Delhi Friends sent me notes and encouragement. I was stretched impossibly thin, but I couldn't stop, because despite everything, I realized something uncomfortable. I still cared. Not because they deserved it, but because I couldn't stop being who I was. Dad survived the critical period. 2 weeks after the heart attack, he regained consciousness. The paralysis was there, affecting his left side, but not as severely as feared. When he first saw me sitting beside his bed, managing hospital charts and medication schedules, his eyes widened with something like confusion. He tried to speak but couldn't yet. "Don't try to talk," I said clinically. "You need rest. Everything is being handled." But later that day, when he thought I wasn't watching, I saw tears run down his face. The man who never cried, who thought tears were weakness, who'd treated me like I was nothing, he was crying. I didn't know what those tears meant. Regret, gratitude, fear, maybe all of it. Dad came home after 3 weeks. The house I'd escaped from became a hospital of sorts. I coordinated everything: nurse schedules, medication timing, physiotherapy appointments, dietary requirements. I transformed from unwanted daughter to family manager. My brothers tried to help but constantly asked me what to do. Mom followed my instructions without question. The dynamic had shifted entirely, but nobody had acknowledged it yet. It was during dinner 6 weeks after Dad came home that everything finally exploded. I was feeding Dad his mashed vegetables. He still couldn't use his left hand well when Arjun said, "Maybe Maya should stay here. Defer her final semester. We need her." I put down the spoon slowly. "Excuse me," Mom nodded eagerly. "He's right. You're managing everything so well. Your father needs you. We all do. Your studies can wait. Family is more important." Something inside me snapped, the same old pattern. Their needs erasing my existence. "No," I said simply. The room went silent. "What do you mean, no?" Vikram asked, confused. "You're needed here." "I'm needed here now. But my entire life can't be about being needed by people who didn't need me until crisis hit," I said, standing up. "You're asking me to sacrifice my future again. For what? So you can go back to treating me like a servant? That's not fair," Mom protested. "We appreciate everything you've done. Do you?" I interrupted, years of suppressed emotion rising like a tidal wave. "Do you appreciate it, or do you just finally find me useful? Because there's a difference. You didn't love me before. You don't love me now. You just need me now." Arjun stood up, defensive. "We're family. Family helps each other. You can't just abandon us." The irony was so thick I almost laughed. "I can't abandon you." Where was this family philosophy when I was growing up? When I slept in a storage room while you two had everything? When I wore torn uniforms while you got new clothes? When I ate leftovers while you got fresh meals? When I cried myself to sleep because my own parents called me a burden? "We never," Mom started. "You did," I shouted, shocking myself with my own volume. "You absolutely did. Every single day. With your words, your actions, your cold shoulders. You made me feel worthless. You made me believe I was a mistake. Do you know what that does to a child? To grow up knowing your own family wishes you weren't born." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I couldn't stop. 23 years of pain poured out. I saved money from age 12, planning my escape. 12 years old. No child should have to plan escape from their own family. I worked myself to exhaustion to earn scholarships because I knew you'd never pay. I left this house at 18 and you didn't even notice. You didn't call. You didn't visit. For 3 years, I didn't exist to you. Dad made a sound, his good hand reaching out weakly. I stepped back. "No, you don't get to silence me now." I stayed when Mom called. I came back when you had a heart attack. I saved this family financially and practically, not because I owe you nothing, but because somehow, despite everything, I'm a better person than any of you taught me to be. Vikram looked stricken, Aryan's face had paled, Mom was crying, and for once I didn't feel guilty about it. I'll stay until Dad is stable, I continued, my voice steadier now. I'll make sure there's a care system in place. I'll teach you all what needs to be done. But then I'm going back to Delhi. I'm finishing my degree, I'm building my life, and you'll have to figure out how to be a family without using me as your solution. Maya, please understand, Mom began. No, Mom, you understand. You don't get to understand me now. You don't get to suddenly see my value just because you're desperate. I'm not staying in this house. I'm not giving up my future. I'm not available to be your burden bearer after being your burden. I walked to my old storage room where I'd been staying these weeks and closed the door. My hands were shaking. My heart pounded. I'd never confronted them like this. I'd never voiced the pain so explicitly. Later, I heard whispers outside my door. My family talking in urgent, hushed tones. I didn't care what they were saying. I'd spoken my truth. Whatever happened next was on them. But what happened next, none of us could have predicted. The morning after my explosion, I found a letter slipped under my door. Dad's handwriting, shaky from his recovery, covered a single page. His speech was still difficult, so he'd written what he couldn't say. Maya, I'm writing because I can't speak well yet. But also because I've been silent you're right, about everything. I was a terrible father. Your mother and I failed you completely. We don't deserve your help. We don't deserve you. The letter went on. He explained things I'd never known. His own father had been brutal, favoring Dad's brothers, treating him as worthless. Dad had sworn to value sons, to never repeat the pattern, but then I was born, a daughter, and something in him broke. Instead of healing his childhood trauma, he'd redirected it. I became the target of pain he'd never processed. It doesn't excuse anything, he wrote, but maybe it explains why I was blind. I saw you and saw my own unwantedness reflected. Instead of protecting you from that feeling, I inflicted it on you. I'm sorry, I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I finally see you. And you're extraordinary. I cried reading it, not tears of reconciliation, it was too soon to offer that, but tears of acknowledgement. The apology didn't erase the past, but it named it. That mattered. Over the next weeks, something shifted. Mom started therapy. I'd made it a condition for my continued help. She began unpacking her own internalized misogyny, her regret, her failures. She couldn't undo the past, but she was trying to understand it. My brothers, humbled by their own failures and my competence, started treating me differently. Not perfectly. Old patterns don't disappear overnight, but Arjun started asking about my life, actually listening to answers. Vikram apologized for years of dismissiveness. They were trying. I completed the care system I'd promised. I hired a part-time nurse, trained Mom on medications, created schedules Arjun and Vikram could follow. I prepared to return to Delhi for my finals. The night before I left, Dad asked me to sit with him. His speech had improved enough for short conversations. You're not coming back after graduation, are you? He asked quietly. I could have lied to comfort him. Instead, I was honest. I don't know, Papa. I need space. I need to build my life without this house's shadows. Maybe someday, but not soon. He nodded, understanding. You should live your life, be free. That's what we should have wanted for you all along. He paused, then added, will you let us know how you're doing? Not because we need you, but because we'd like to know our daughter. Something in that phrasing, our daughter, not you, touched something in me. I'll call, sometimes on my terms, on your terms, he agreed. At Delhi University, I walked across the stage to receive my degree with honours. Rahul was there, cheering loudly. My hostel friends threw me a party. Mrs. Kapoor gave me a beautiful journal for my future writing. This was my family, the one I'd chosen, the one that chose me. But in the audience, Unexpected and uninvited, I spotted them. Mom, Dad in a wheelchair, Arjun, and Vikram. They'd travelled 9 hours to be there. Mom was crying. Dad was smiling despite his crooked face. My brothers were clapping. I didn't run to them. I didn't pretend everything was fine, but after the ceremony, I walked over. "What are you doing here? We missed your high school graduation," Mom said softly. "Every achievement you ever had, we missed. We couldn't miss this one. Even if you didn't want us here, we needed to be here." I stood there, diploma in hand, looking at this broken family that had broken me. They hadn't magically become perfect. Love doesn't heal everything, and forgiveness isn't mandatory. But they were trying. Maybe that was something. "There's a dinner," I said finally, "with my friends. You can come if you want. But they're my family too. You'll have to share me." Mom's face lit up. "We'll share. We'll take whatever you're willing to give." I introduced them to my chosen family. Watching my worlds collide was strange, uncomfortable, but not unbearable. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no magical forgiveness montage. The hurt didn't disappear, but it was a beginning. A small one. I was no longer the burden. I was no longer defined by their rejection. I was Maya, graduate, writer, survivor, daughter on my own terms. And maybe that was enough.